to say, order, order. Right, I've always wanted to say this, could all of those not involved in the next debate please leave the chamber quietly? Right, Sir Sajid Javid to move the motion.
I beg to move that this House has considered World ME Day. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Dame Siobhan, and I'm extremely grateful to colleagues from across the House for their attendance today. There is no single universal experience of myalgic encephalomyelitis, otherwise known as ME. For those who are living with this condition, the distressing and familiar pattern can be all too clear. Initial signs of fatigue, a drastic change in physical ability and activity, and the loss of mental focus and confidence. The condition can begin after a battle with a viral infection, but for others, the start of symptoms can simply just seem unexplainable. Answers and hope are sought by often visiting medical professionals, but too often, ME patients are misdiagnosed, or at worst, they are dismissed entirely. Parents and carers who simply try their best can be chastised, and a once healthy person, a loved one, is slowly taken away by this very cruel condition. Chair, as a country, we have made tremendous progress in combating so many diseases and illnesses. There has been a welcome step change in medical advancement and attitudes, but people with ME have not seen this progress. In fact, I would argue they have been left behind. This debate provides an opportunity to share the experiences of people living with this condition ahead of World ME Day on May the 12th, and for us to consider what more can be done to improve experiences and outcomes for people across the United Kingdom. And I know that we are joined today in person and online today by many people who live with this condition, and I thank them for their continued strength. Now, when I was appointed the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, we were in the middle of fighting the pandemic. Of course, priorities and resources were naturally stretched, but the emergence of long COVID saw renewed attention brought to ME. And for me, the fight against this illness was not just a policy area, a very important policy area, of course, but it was also something that was simply also very personal. My cousin, who is here with us today, has an amazing daughter who bravely battles this condition. Until the age of 13, she was a happy, healthy teenager. She was academically gifted and a talented netball player. And 7 years later, today, her life has completely changed. So as Secretary of State, I set out my vision for a new approach to ME/CFS in May 2022. I co-chaired a roundtable with the Chief Scientific Advisor, Professor Lucy Chappell, to bring together experts, including people with lived experience, to discuss what needs to happen next. And I also announced the government's intention to develop a cross-government delivery plan for England. 2 years later, although ministers have understandably changed, I hope the determination that I had to tackle this condition remains in government. I was, of course, pleased to see that there was a publication of an interim delivery plan by the government back in August of last year. Supporting people with ME should, of course, be a cross-government initiative. And although the work is rightly led by my right honourable friend's department, the Department for Health and Social Care, I was also pleased to see that this plan was jointly published with the Department of Education and the DWP.
Would the right honourable member give way?
Yes, of course.
I'm very grateful to the right honourable member for giving way, and very pleased to serve under your chairmanship. Sorry, your chair of the committee, Dame Siobhan. I really wanted to raise the issue in relation to all departments being involved, and it relates to my constituent, Sienna Wimmis, who was diagnosed in 2022, and she's 16 years old. and she still has not got an education, care and health plan. And that has meant for her that she got a place at our local college, Barking College, arrived there, her mother had spoken to the teachers about it, but nevertheless she was sent home because she couldn't attend. She finds it difficult even to comb her hair, and she's at home. So she's lost out on education. Does the Right Honourable Member not agree with me that it's really important, not just that health plays its role, but that education also plays its role? And further, whilst I am on my feet, would he also agree with me? She has to travel in. There are no local health facilities to respond to her needs and to care for her. So she has to travel into University College Hospital, which is miles from the constituents in Barking. Does he not further agree with me that there should be local healthcare facilities to respond to the needs of people who have this condition?
Yeah, well, first, can I thank the Right Honourable Member for her intervention, and I agree with her on both points. And she emphasises first the importance of the government's plan, the final plan of being a proper cross-government plan, and I hope my Right Honourable friend, the Minister, will speak to that cross-government nature of the work that he is leading on behalf of the government. And I also agree with the Right Honourable Member on her point about local health support, and that must also be addressed and covered in this final plan that is published. And I must say, what she's shared with the House, I've heard very similar stories from constituents and others as well, and I completely agree with her. So again, I thank her for that intervention. And what I must say, Madam Chair, is that when I committed the government to developing a cross-government delivery plan, I stated, and it was in a written statement to this House, and I quote, "Officials will work with stakeholders ahead of publishing the delivery plan this year." Now, despite this commitment for the delivery plan to be published by the end of 2022, it wasn't until August 2023 that an interim plan was published. And within the ministerial forward of that interim delivery plan, the minister's immediate predecessor stated, and I quote, that the final delivery plan will be published later this year. That was the end of last year. So now we are in May 2024, approaching exactly 2 years since I made the initial commitment. And I am now also, I must say, hearing disturbing reports, Madam Chair, that despite 2 years of waiting, that the final delivery plan may not indeed be published until the end of this year. So, Madam Chair, everyone knows that my Right Honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has committed the country to a general election by the end of this year. And we also know that at the point that this general election is called, there will be no government publication of any sort that will take place, meaning there is absolutely no time to waste. So, Madam Chair, therefore, may I ask the Minister, when he responds to this debate, if he can give a specific commitment to this House that the final delivery plan will be published before the summer recess, or at the very latest, just after the summer recess. Will you give way? Yes, of course.
I'm very grateful for giving way, and I pay tribute to my Right Honourable friend for the leadership that he has shown on this issue and continues to do so. I've been contacted by Phoebe Van Dyke, as a young woman living in my constituency, struggling with ME, and her concern is about the extent of the skills that the general medical profession that she encounters has. Her concern is that too many of the doctors she encounters don't understand enough about the condition. Can my Right Honourable friend assure me that the delivery plan that he wants the government to bring forward will ensure that there is much better training across the range of medical professionals to ensure that people have the skills to understand the condition?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I can assure him that's definitely what I want to see in the plan. But perhaps what's going to be more important now is to hear from our honourable friend, the Minister, to hear that commitment, because it is touched upon in the interim plan, but I think what we all want to see is in that final cross-government plan that issue, amongst the others, is also addressed. Now, Madam Chair, the interim delivery plan, it did set out some of the current challenges that we must address to improve outcomes and experiences for individuals with ME. We must ensure that the final delivery plan focuses at least on 2 key areas, and that is outcomes and experiences. But making progress in these areas also requires addressing more fundamental problems. So, for example, there is a huge cultural problem when it comes to ME, with a lack of medical understanding and awareness. There is a critical lack of data and research, and there is still no existing cure or even treatments. For instance, it is estimated, and this number is often quoted, I use it myself, it's estimated that around 250,000 people are living with ME in the UK. But even this figure is 10 years old, highlighting the lack of data and research in this field. And without a clear data set and understanding, tackling the issue, of course, becomes an even bigger uphill battle. This is why there are research projects such as Decode ME, which are absolutely vital, because they help increase understanding and they serve as a critical platform for future work. And yes, I will. Yes.
I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable gentleman for giving way. I wonder if he would agree with me that another issue that is faced by constituents is that the NICE guidelines that were introduced aren't being used by every single trust in the country. Only, I think, 28% of NHS trusts are using those NICE guidelines. Would you agree with me that consistency of a treatment and approach would be an important step in making sure that people can get the care that they need?
Yes, I agree with the honourable member, and I remember that those guidelines were changed whilst I was the Secretary of State for Health, and I remember welcoming those, but the expectation, of course, was that they would be properly followed. And as the honourable member says, in all something like 70% of cases, that is doesn't seem to be the case. And I think we would all want to see that addressed, and I hope that the Minister might be able to perhaps pick up on that point when he responds. Madam Chairman, turning to the issue of research, another example is a project called LOCUM, a groundbreaking research project on long COVID and ME diagnostics. It's co-led by Action for ME, the University of Edinburgh, and a computational biology company called Precision Life. It is hoped that this new project, which is utilising the data that's been gathered from the Decode ME project, will provide insights that will be able to create the first predictive diagnostic tools for ME and for long COVID. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the charity Action for ME for their world-leading work on this project and their crucial support, the research they do and the campaigning they do to improve ME research and outcomes. It is vital that we continue to support organisations such as Action for ME and researchers in this way. The focus of World ME Day in 2024 this year is to build, their focus will be to build a global voice for ME. So in this spirit, it is important that we collaborate with allies across the globe to further research in this area. But even with more research, if we know it will be a long journey to achieve our desired outcomes. This is why improving the experiences of those living with ME and their families is also absolutely vital. I know from my own engagement that individuals with lived experience often feel dismissed. I recall a recent Channel 4 report, Madam Chair, that even highlighted the case of a family who had social services investigate the care of their daughter because they believed that she was being kept in bed against her will. And if it were not for the campaigning organisations like Action for ME, but also the ME Association, the APPG for ME, the organisation Forward ME, and the World ME Alliance, and the work of incredible individuals such as Sean O'Neill, who I believe joins us today, who has led an inspiring campaign in the memory of his daughter, Maeve, the situation would feel almost hopeless if we didn't have these people battling for more work to be done in ME. And it's because of them that the case of the community is being heard. And having myself served in government for so long, I know that when people speak up with the support of many honourable colleagues from right across the House, the government must listen. So, Madam Chair, 2024 marks 55 years since the World Health Organization officially acknowledged ME. For too long, we have failed to recognise the severity of this condition for thousands of people across the UK. So as we mark World ME Day on the 12th of May, we must renew our commitments to improving outcomes and experiences for everyone affected. It is great to see So many honourable members, I say, from across the House today, and I'm grateful to everyone who has attended today's debate in the public gallery and also, indeed, those that perhaps might be joining online. Where such support exists, there is always hope. The ambition is to improve the lives of people with this condition today and ensure that future generations have a brighter future. Helping to make that ambition a reality is now the responsibility of my right honourable friend, the Minister, and I look forward to his response and the contribution of other honourable members. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If necessary, I don't think it is necessary, I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in the debate. The question is that this House has considered World ME Day. Fleur Anderson.
Thank you very much. It's an honour to serve under your chairship, Dame McDonough, and to be speaking in this debate at this very important time ahead of World ME Day on 12th of May. And I wish to congratulate and thank the Right Honourable Member for Bromsgrove for securing this debate and for continuing to champion the cause which is so needed. I'd also like to thank Action for ME for their research, their campaigning and providing visibility for so many people who have ME, who are bedbound and housebound and cannot speak for themselves. And that's why I want to be championing, and I have been championing this condition, because so many of my constituents have been in touch with me. And to be honest, when I was pregnant, I had very severe morning sickness. It was not morning sickness, but it meant that I was bedbound for many, many months. And I had an inkling, I think, of what is suffered by people who have ME, but for so long and with so little hope, because, as the Honourable Member have just said, there's no treatment, there's no cure. So today, to be raising these issues, to be talking about the research that's needed, the treatment that's needed, and the understanding in workplaces, in school, and in healthcare system is so important. And I think this debate will mark a huge step forward for that. ME is a chronic illness that affects multiple body systems and leaves those suffering unable to take part in everyday activities. In the UK, we know at least 250,000 people suffer from ME, but that's an outdated statistic, and it hasn't been updated for over a decade, and the real figure is likely to be far higher. An estimated 1.3 million people live with ME or ME-like symptoms, and 50% of people with long COVID have symptoms that mirror ME. 1 in 4 of those are housebound, and women are 5 times more likely to develop ME and have more symptoms from their ME than men. And I think this may be at the heart of why this has been such an underfunded and neglected disease, because it is women who are suffering so much more predominantly than men. People with ME suffer disproportionately high levels of stigma and lack of understanding compared to other major chronic illnesses. This ignorance makes it more of a challenge to address and treat, and they suffer misunderstandings in education, in work and in healthcare, and many constituents have shared stories with me. They've told me stories about PIP assessments as well, which do not meet the needs of a fluctuating condition, and don't take account of this condition in the timings and the way that people are assessed, which leads to them receiving less support from the state. Over the last 10 years, only £8.05 million has been spent on ME research. If this was equitable to other illnesses, ME would have received over £10 million or more. But without urgent research, those estimated 250,000 people in the UK living with illness, or many more, will continue to feel unseen and left behind. And this inaction comes as a significant cost. Without this research, people living with ME will continue to suffer from a range of debilitating symptoms that push them towards the edge of society. The links with long COVID offer hope for research and should be entirely embraced, and I hope to see that that will be embraced in the plan that we hope will be published soon and that the Minister will tell us about later. The government claims it wants to get people back to work, yet it continues to underfund vital investment in ME that could help thousands of people rejoin the workforce. But while the government continues to dither and delay on this plan, others are stepping up. Action for ME is co-leading a pioneering research project into ME to uncover its genetic causes, called Decode ME, which is funded by the MRC and the NIHR. This should understand how ME affects people, and is the first step towards developing effective treatments. So while I, with others, welcomed the government's announcement and by the Honourable Member for Bromsgrove on ME Day in May 2022 of the cross-government ME delivery plan, The publication of the final plan, as has been outlined, has been delayed again and again, but is badly needed by sufferers across the country. My constituents are feeling the direct implications of this lack of funding for research. Especially, I'd like to highlight the inadequacy of secondary care in particular. Zoe is one of my constituents, and she wrote this to me. She said, "I'm lucky that my GP is great and recognised the symptoms early and found me a good clinic to go to, but ongoing support in secondary care is non-existent. Compared to others, I was lucky to have got what I got, but it was 6 appointments with a consultant and his team, and that's it. No ongoing care, no ongoing support. Because of the complex nature of the illness, I've had to be referred to multiple secondary care clinics to manage all my ongoing symptoms. I go to St George's, Bart's, King's, UCL and the Royal Free. At best they're well-meaning, but not well-educated about ME. At worst, I experience a huge amount of medical gaslighting or complete indifference, disbelief or disinterest in the ME. I had such a poor experience with secondary care this week that the stress of dealing with the doctor and the clinic has further exacerbated the flare of symptoms. It's a lot to expect a person with ME to manage. Just yesterday, I was walking through Putney and Donna in my constituency came up to me to tell me about the hugely life-limiting impact ME has had on her. She was in a wheelchair and she said that trip out to get a prescription means that she won't be able to go out again for the next 2 weeks. She said she's constantly misunderstood and neglected in the healthcare system. Recently, the cases of Carla, Millie and Karen, who are all young women in hospital with severe ME and struggling to access the care they need, the appropriate feeding, tests and medical care, paints the picture of a broken system. They've been treated as psychological cases, not medical and physical. Carla, Millie and Karen have been let down time and time again. So I urge the government not to permit the growing cases of ME across the country to morph into a health crisis over which there are no cures. And I will end with a call for 5 actions. First, to end the stigma and taboo in healthcare situations, in work and in schools. Second, for the full implementation of the 2021 NICE, ME and CFS guidelines, including diagnosis across the country. Third, to fund research into severe ME and to join that up with the research into long COVID. Fourth, to look into the situation and care for Carla, Millie and Karen and poor hospital care for all other sufferers of ME. And fifth, to publish, fund and implement the cross-departmental ME delivery plan before the general election. I hope the Minister has been writing all of them down and I hope to hear about this later, but I hope that this debate will really mark a step change forward in the understanding of people with ME and hope for the future. Thank you.
Caroline Noakes.
Thank you, Dame Siobhan, and it's a pleasure to see you in the chair today. I would also like to extend my congratulations to my right honourable friend, the member for Bromsgrove, for his leadership on this issue. Of course, we know that he started the train of getting work done on ME when he was Health Secretary. Too often in this place we move on from departments and never speak of them again, but he really hasn't and has championed the cause of the sufferers of ME and indeed their families with real vigour. It seems bizarre in this place to refer to long COVID with a welcome message, but actually what long COVID has done is provided a spotlight which has been thrown back on ME. We know that it is a post-viral condition. We don't really know why. But actually the number of sufferers of long COVID have given us an opportunity to look again at ME and hopefully in this place for some of us to begin to understand more and broaden our knowledge of the condition. But what my right honourable friend did was bring a new approach, and my constituents certainly wish to extend their thanks to him for that. Now, I always say in Romsey and Southampton North, I am blessed with constituents who are not only articulate and willing to share their views with me, but in many instances they are often experts as well. And Professor Sir Stephen Holgate contacted me ahead of this debate, making a very pertinent point that for those sufferers of ME, many of whom have been bedbound for years, surely I could spend an hour of my time raising their plight in this chamber. And I'm certainly very pleased to do so. He highlighted to me, and the Honourable Lady for Putney has also emphasised this, the well-established sex bias that there is amongst sufferers of ME. Of the 17,000 sufferers recently surveyed, women made up 83.5% of the respondents. We know they are 5 times more likely to suffer than their male counterparts. So I would say to the Minister, very gently, an unusual stance for me, that we have to do more about the bias that exists in medical research, the bias that we know exists in clinical trials, and we have to stop the situation which still prevails to this day, where too often conditions suffered by women are portrayed as them simply being hysterical. ME is a serious condition. This is not something that is all in the mind, as my constituents have on too many occasions been told. And we need to make sure that not only is there more investment into research to find the causes of ME, to hopefully find more effective treatments, and that holy grail, of course, to find a cure, but we have to make sure that that research is focused on the women who need it. I welcome the cross-government delivery plan that was set in train by my right honourable friend, but we do need to see it, not just the interim version. We need to see the final plan, and we need it to be delivered. We need it to be rolled out into every trust and ICB. We need it to be effective for our constituents, which brings me on to the point of my constituent. I was contacted by a mother, Elaine, and the point she made in her email to me was that she wants her voice and the voice of her daughter to be heard, because her daughter was a high achiever, training to be a dancer. She had already secured 5 A-levels when she was struck down with ME. And the words that she has used are heartbreaking. She's been stigmatised, she's been gaslighted, and she's been ridiculed. And as a result, she now avoids doctors. She avoids going to get the very help that she needs because she fears that her condition will lead to ridicule. That is simply not acceptable in a 21st century health system. So we have to do more to make sure that there is greater awareness, not just in this chamber today, but actually out in our ICBs and in our GP surgeries, so that those sufferers who are presenting for the first time don't get ridiculed, don't get labelled as being hysterical women. They actually get the help that they need, because you cannot have a situation where our constituents are avoiding the people who they need to turn to for help. As I've said, there is bias that we have to overcome. There is a gap in research funding. Only £8 million has been spent in research on ME over the last 10 years. That is just simply disproportionate to the number of sufferers. It should be several times that figure. And we still know less about every aspect of female biology than we do about male biology. And I would like to hear from the Minister today a commitment that he, whilst in this role, will do his absolute utmost to eliminate the gender bias that we still see in medical research.
McDonnell.
Lots of dames about in this debate earlier. Can I congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman for not just for securing the debate, but also for the groundbreaking work he did in establishing the delivery plan. I think we're all grateful for that. We all come to this with our own experiences. My first constituency case was nearly 30 years ago, and I remember it well. Heartbreaking, a young woman who was had a full-time job, was bringing up her family, 2 children, active in the local community, active in their trade union, and went down with a condition she never understood. It wasn't recognised for a long period of time, even by a local doctor. There was a lot of stigma attached to it at the time, if you remember some of the media were running stories like that. And it took her years before she could come to terms with it and then really re-engage fully with her life after a lot of support. The thing about all these experiences is that when we see a debate call like this, it gives us the opportunity to share those experiences, but what it also does, it prompts organisations to send us briefings. And can I congratulate Action for ME for the excellent briefing that they've circulated. It actually has brought us up to speed on a whole range of issues, and I actually do think it's focused in advance. I want to just respond in supporting the half a dozen demands that my honourable friend made. The first one, I think, is about the recognition of the consequences and the scale of ME within our society. One area that I don't think we've explored enough is the mental health consequences of ME. I've certainly found in the cases that I've dealt with,
it's led people to break down virtually because of the frustration of having lived an active life, now not being able to, and then facing all these barriers as well as the stigma. I don't think we fully understand the whole range of consequences in that. I fully agree about research, that our demand is doubling at least. And I was shocked, actually, when I saw the figures within the briefing that it was so low after all this time and the debates that we've had. And I also think long COVID has brought a new dimension to this whole debate now. And I am receiving lots of representations from constituents about long COVID, and it is exactly like we were going through the ME process or all over again. So I congratulate Action for ME as well. Exactly as the Right Honourable Gentleman said, the establishment of the Centre of Excellence up in Edinburgh, I think it's a huge breakthrough. And I think it will be a world leader. I also have to say, I was shocked at I thought the NICE guidelines were being rolled out more effectively. And the figure, I think it's 76% of ICBs have not got a specialist service. I was really shocked by that. And again, we need to think, how's that gone wrong and what needs to put that right. The other point as well on benefits my honourable friend made, the government is now reforming yet again the benefit system. I'm really worried about those reforms. I've met with a whole range of disability groups. People are actually petrified. There's real fear out there. And there's fear amongst people with this particular condition as well, because anyone who's assisted a constituent going through the appeal process understands how difficult it is. The point was made about fluctuating conditions, how difficult it is to get that across, particularly when, I don't criticise the clinicians for this, particularly when there's still a lack of understanding, thorough understanding among some clinicians about this condition. Can I raise just one further point that hasn't been raised? I've come across case after case where protection at work has not been in place, and therefore people have lost their jobs, or they've lost promotion, or they've lost access to training, etc. And there hasn't been the reasonable adjustments that we thought we'd built into the legislation. And I think that needs a review now as we go into this next period. I know there'll be new employment legislation coming forward. I think certainly if there's a change of government, and there may well be, whether there's a change of government or not, because there's issues now that have to be addressed and that relate to the quality of employment life as well. And this is one of them. I'm really grateful for the debate that's come today. I'll be able to report back to constituents that Parliament has discussed this matter. And I agree, I have the same confidence that the Right Honourable Gentleman has, that when you get a group of MPs working on a cross-party basis like this, and you make the noise, both civil servants and ministers do listen. So I'm hoping the Minister can report today, particularly on the timing of the delivery plan, which will give us so much hope. Thank you.
I'd like to call Jim Shannon, and I would just ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to voluntarily restrict your comments until 8 minutes past 5, in order that I could take both opposition for 5 minutes and the Minister for 10 minutes, because I think people want to hear what he has to say.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, Madam Chair, I certainly will do exactly that. I'm very happy to. I worked upon 5 minutes being my contribution anyway. Can I first of all say congratulate the Honourable Gentleman for Brimsgrove for highlighting World ME Day. I was just sitting there and listening to the Honourable Member for Hayes and Harlington, and my first introduction as an elected representative probably was as a member of the Assembly back in when I first was elected back in 1998, a Stormont, and a person came to me one day and she had ME. I'll be honest, Madam Chair, I had no idea what it was, but I knew one thing: that lady in front of me was ill, and I'm not wiser than anybody else. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I'm not a doctor, but I can recognise pain. I can recognise a disability that hurts and was making her life absolutely unworkable. And when you look at those things of 7 days, the question they ask you in your benefits, because I helped her with her benefits, which incidentally we won it at appeal. But the reason why we won it, because if I could see what that lady was going through, I tell you what, the panel, the 4 people in the panel, they seen it as well. So we fought our appeal, and the question you always ask in the appeal, and another member for Hayes and Harlington will refer to this himself, and I always ask the person, you have 7 days in a week, and many of those days are you ill? And the lady will tell you, or the person will tell you. Sometimes they're ill for a week, sometimes they're not ill, sometimes they're ill for 3 days of them 7 days. But the point I'm making is they're ill, and it's a case of proving that. So when I read the article by Hope for Fibro, which really summarised how the ME community feels, this is that in recent times the landscape of ME has undergone a transformation, with COVID-19 emerging as the most common trigger for this chronic illness. The intersection of these two health challenges has resulted in a significant increase in the number of people affected by ME. And if it's right, an estimated 55 million individuals worldwide are living with the debilitating effects of this condition, then it is an epidemic across the world. Amidst these escalating numbers, Hope for ME and Fibro Northern Ireland proudly sat alongside World ME Alliance members across the globe. We collectively amplify support for initiatives that seek to address the multifaceted impact of ME on individuals and communities alike. As an active member of Parliament and as an active member of the Assembly as I was, and as an active councillor as I was as well, and I think this is now my 39th year in elected service, I've seen those debilitating effects that those with ME had, and the importance. So one of the harsh realities we face, there's currently no cure. Individuals grappling with ME often endure both the physical toll of the illness and the stigmas that accompany it. It's imperative that we, as a global community, and in this House today, come together to address these gaps in understanding, treatment and research. And this is where we in this place have a part to play. The Honourable Gentleman from Broomgrove said the scene so well. Others have, in their contributions, interventions and speeches, and those that will follow will tell it again. And I do not believe that we have truly done more than scratch the surface of fulfilling our obligation to those who are inexpressibly pain daily and made to feel as if it's somehow only in their head. It's not in their head. I'm not a doctor, but I can see pain. I can see agony. I can see trauma. I can see people who need help. And if I can do that, everybody in this room can do the same, because that's what we do every day when we deal with people. They live feeling ashamed of an illness, but most other illnesses are accepted as being out of the hands of the victim. There's work to do in the way that our health and benefits departments view ME, big role to play for them, I believe, and subsequently treat those who suffer from ME and associated illnesses. And the support is offered not simply to them, but also to the families. Never forget the families. There's not just that one person suffering. The whole family suffers because they can see the pain and the agony as well. It's undoubted that the burden is often shared by the entire household, both emotionally, physically, and also financially. I conclude with this, ever mindful of your request. I think in the World ME Awareness Day, we need to be aware that the people we may see for a brief moment may be fighting a battle with pain that we can't maybe just fully understand. We can't share that pain, but we can hopefully appreciate what they're saying. It's our job in this place to fight harder for them, and for them this debate today is a continuation of that very battle that they have fought, and we fight today alongside them. Thank you.
I call the front bench spokesperson from the SNP.
Thank you, Dame Siobhan. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I'll start by declaring an interest as the chair of the APPG on ME. And I want to thank the Right Honourable Member for Bromsgrove, not just for bringing forward this debate, but for the work he has done. It's the second anniversary of the publication of a report, Rethinking ME, that was produced by the APPG. And as Health Secretary, he came to that launch event here in Parliament, and it was very much appreciated by the ME community. But more importantly, under his direction, the Department of Health and Social Care started engaging with the APPG in a way that hadn't happened previously, to learn about our findings and recommendations from the report. And following that, of course, there was the announcement of the interim delivery plan for ME, and the consultation was opened up for those with a lived experience. His hand was all over that work, and that has really been transformational in terms of getting the opinions of those who are actually living with ME on a day-to-day basis. But the publication of the final plan has been delayed several times, as we've heard already. So this is something I'll press the Minister on. We need to know when the final delivery plan is going to be produced, and we don't want it to be after a general election, because another government might mean different priorities. We need that plan now. Other steps that have taken the situation forward in terms of those with ME was the publication of the new NICE guideline in 2021. And this replaced the previous guideline that had recommended graded exercise therapy as a treatment for ME, a treatment which many had undertaken and many had had their symptoms made far worse as a result of. So it was good to see the publication of that, but there's still much more to be done. We've heard this afternoon from both the member for Putney and the member for Romsey and Southampton North that this is a condition that impacts women far more than men. So there has to be a focus on women, both in research and in terms of the treatment and diagnosis of the condition. But there's lots of issues that are experienced by people with ME. A lack of understanding in healthcare by healthcare professionals, as has been highlighted by the Honourable Member for Hayes and Harlington, which leads to delays in diagnosis and inappropriate treatments. And we are still hearing of people being forced through graded exercise, i.e. the old NICE guidelines, not the new ones. Parents of children with ME are finding themselves subject to child protection investigations. This has to stop. And of course, difficulties negotiating the welfare system, as has been highlighted by the Honourable Member from Strangford. And according to Anne Innes, who is a welfare rights advisor with the ME Association, repeated assessments are a huge strain on people with ME. They put them back considerably in terms of their health. But one of the areas of greatest concern is the treatment of those with severe ME. It's estimated that 1 in 4 people with ME have it severely, which means they're housebound or bedbound and need 24-hour care. There have been 62 deaths between 2017 and 2021 attributed to ME. And the tragic death of Maeve Boothby O'Neill highlights the need for urgent action. Maeve was hospitalised repeatedly and repeatedly discharged due to a lack of specialist services for ME patients. The absence of known treatments meant her diagnosis, sadly, came too late. And I pay tribute to her dad, Sean O'Neill, who joins us this afternoon for the work he has done. But over the next couple of months, APPG will be taking evidence from those affected by severe ME, and I'd encourage the members that are here today to join us for those sessions, where we'll hear what we can do as parliamentarians and what we should be doing. But if outcomes are going to improve, increased funding for biomedical research is vital. And I would ask the Minister how much there's going to be, how that's going to be delivered and where we're going to see that. No, I'm out of time, but I just pay very quick tribute to a couple of people. Countess Marr from the other place, who sadly has had to retire, but she's done decades of work. Sonia Chowdhury from Action for ME, who joins us. Forward ME, the ME Association, and to all of those affected by ME and their families who have done so much work bringing it to the attention of members here in this place.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Dame Siobhan, and it's always a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Can I start by congratulating the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member for Bromsgrove, for securing this really important debate, but also for the work that he's done in the past as Health Secretary, but also continuing to do as a Member of Parliament on the issue of ME, which we know is a profoundly debilitating and chronic condition that affects various systems across the body. Figures estimate that there are at least 250,000 people in the UK living with ME. However, it's estimated that upwards of 1.3 million people are living with ME or ME-like symptoms following a COVID-19 infection. As we've heard, women are 5 times more likely to develop ME than men and experience more symptoms than men. Many parallels have been drawn between ME and long COVID, given research has indicated that at least half of those living with long COVID have symptoms that directly mirror those of ME. And Dame Siobhan, as someone who continues to suffer from the effects of long COVID, those are symptoms that are all too familiar to me. A draining fatigue that never seems to go away, constantly disturbed sleep, an endless feeling of exhaustion, and a debilitating brain fog that can strike at the most inconvenient of moments. And I just want to place on the record that this week I've managed to control my long COVID for the best part of 2 years. And this week has been a very bad week for me. I was in bed for all of today and have only come in just to do this speech today. And the reason there's a bundle of tissues here is because the sweat's just hit me walking into work. So I do understand. I've lived with the experience of symptoms very similar to ME. And I have to say I agree with my right honourable friend, the member for Hayes and Harlington, about the impact this has on people in work because you don't know which days are going to be your good days and your bad days. And you are judged against your bad days, sadly. And that is true. And we need to educate employers about ME, about long COVID, so that reasonable adjustments can be made. But also when it comes to the changes to the welfare system. Because when I'm on my very worst of days, very early on after I contracted COVID-19, if I'd have turned up for a work capability assessment, I'd have been signed off work because it was obvious to all. But on my best days, you'd think there's nothing wrong with him. And so if I had the misfortune of having my work capability assessment on one of my better days, I'd be then put into work when I wasn't capable. So these are issues that cross government we've got to attend to. And we know that ME costs the UK economy around £3.3 billion a year, and that is growing. But we also need far better understanding of this debilitating condition and the impacts that it has on too many people's day-to-day lives. And that's why Labour is committed to putting Britain at the front of the queue for treatments by boosting clinical trial activity in the NHS. We'll speed up recruitment to trials and give more people the chance to participate. We will link up clinical trial registries to create national standing registries and harness the power of the NHS app to invite eligible participants to take part in research studies which they are eligible for. We also need to rebuild the system so that it recognises the impact of post-viral conditions like ME and that it equips those with the tools needed to work with it. We need to refocus our services away from hospital settings to be rooted in the community so that patients can access care when and where they need it. And we need to bolster the workforce that can understand better ME and so that people can get timely care. But above all, Dame Siobhan, and I'll end on this, we need to get that delivery plan published sooner rather than later. And I implore on the Minister, for World ME Day, he's got cross-party support. Let's get it published ASAP.
Call the Minister.
Thank you, Dame Siobhan. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and can I start by paying tribute to my right honourable friend, the member for Bromsgrove, for bringing forward such an important debate ahead of World ME Day on the 12th of May. As Health Secretary, he laid the foundations for our cross-government delivery plan, and from the backbenches, he has been a tireless champion for people living with ME. Let me join him in welcoming his cousin to the House today. I'd also like to pay tribute to the ME Association, Action for ME, Forward ME, and many other outstanding charities who do incredible work in this area. Can I also thank the Right Honourable members for Barking, Hayes and Harlington, Romsey and Southampton North, the Honourable members for Devizes, North Shropshire, Putney and Strangford, and the Shadow SNP spokeswoman and the Shadow Minister for their thoughtful contributions. And I particularly pay tribute to the Shadow SNP spokeswoman for the work she's done as part of the APPG, And can I particularly pay tribute to the Shadow Minister for coming here today despite his own health challenges. I will do my best to address as many of the points raised as possible during my response in the time that is allowed. At the start, let me just address one of the points that was made by the Right Honourable Member for Barking. This is very much a cross-government piece of work. I'll be working very closely, particularly with the Department for Education and others, to ensure that we get this right. It is correct that this is a health lead, but it is right that this is a cross-government piece of work. ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, is a complex medical condition with a wide array of symptoms. Some people with ME struggle to do even the most basic things that we all take for granted, going to the office, seeing a GP, or even taking their children to football. This debate comes at a critical time, as new studies are beginning to pinpoint parts of the brain that affect the condition. And a recent report has shown the yearly cost to the UK economy could be above £3 billion. So whilst our understanding is improving, people with ME must receive the right care and support to manage their symptoms and, where possible, to be able to move on with their lives. But sadly, my right honourable friend has so eloquently set out today, there has been a real lack of awareness among some medical professionals and the wider public, a point also highlighted by my honourable friend, the member for Devizes, and the right honourable member for Hayes and Harlington. For so long, people were dismissed, ignored, or even told their symptoms were all in their head. But as anyone who lives with ME knows, it is so much more than just feeling very tired. For a quarter of sufferers with severe symptoms, it is truly debilitating. This is why our delivery plan is vital. As my right honourable friend knows, it has two core principles at its heart. First, we must know more about ME if we are able to improve outcomes. And second, we must trust and listen to people with ME to improve their experience. That is why the government published the interim delivery plan in August last year, proposing a set of actions on research and education, but also tackling those old attitudes and adapting the language we use to describe the condition. Since then, we have consulted on the interim delivery plan to understand where the plan is strong and where we need to go further. I would like to thank the more than 3,000 people and organisations right across the United Kingdom who took part. As we speak, officials are analysing thousands of responses, and we will publish a summary shortly. These responses will be instrumental in developing the final cross-government delivery plan, which will be published later this year. I completely understand my right honourable friend's frustrations, and he makes a powerful case for publishing the plan before the summer. Whilst I cannot make that commitment at this time, I have assured him privately, and I will do so again today publicly, that I will do all in my power to ensure that the plan is published as soon as possible. Our consultation had a huge response, which is fantastic, as we wanted the broadest range of voices to inform how we shape the plan. But the responses have also shown just how complex the challenges are. Once we've published our response to the consultation in the spring, it is vital that we go back and work very closely with patient groups to finesse the final plan, which could take some time. But as my right honourable friend has said, for too long, people with ME have been ignored and dismissed. That's why we want to take the time to properly understand the challenges they face and listen to the solutions they propose, because it is so important that we get this right. But I have heard him, and I will continue to work hard with officials to come up with a plan that delivers for people with ME as soon as possible.
The Minister could write to us about those areas that require the finessing for the eventual final plan.
So I'm happy to provide an update to members. I hope when we provide that summary of the 3,000 plus responses, it will shine a real clear light on it. But I'm more than happy to write to everyone who's engaged in today's debate to just update and perhaps address any points that I'm not able to address in the time allowed. Dame Siobhan, patients can only receive the care they deserve with timely and accurate diagnosis. Sadly, there is no specific test for ME, which can be challenging to diagnose as it shares some symptoms with other conditions as set out by the Shadow Minister. That's why the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence published the new guidelines that several members mentioned on the management of ME in 2021. This was a step forward in terms of helping medical professionals understand the condition for people to be diagnosed as soon as possible. It also set out best practice for healthcare professionals in the management of ME and the care and support they should offer to patients. However,
We've heard this afternoon that there are many health trusts that are not implementing the new guidelines. Could he or his department undertake to write to health boards to actually remind them that this the new guideline is in place?
I completely understand the frustration which was raised by the member for North Shropshire as well as other members about the lack of implementation. At the moment, NHS England and ourselves, we are working hard to understand the barriers as to why the guidelines haven't been fully implemented. They should be fully implemented, but they haven't been, and we acknowledge that. The reason why it's so important that we get this plan over the line, because the final delivery plan will, I'm sure without doubt, underline the need to follow NICE guidelines. And this will be underpinned by e-learning from the department on the development of new medical professionals and other initiatives that have been taken as part of the plan. I'm very keen for that to be looked at. I'm just going to turn to medical training, but the NICE guidelines should be being followed, and we're trying to understand why in all too many trusts, sadly, that has not been the case. These new guidelines, of course, whilst they're important by themselves, they must come with a broader cultural shift across the NHS, which is why we've been working with NHS England to develop an e-learning course for health professionals who have helped to develop that course themselves alongside charities and people living with ME. The Medical Schools Council will promote this course to every medical school in the country, whilst encouraging schools to take students face-to-face with patients who suffer from ME to help bust some of the myths around the condition. Dame Siobhan, I would like to end by saying a few words about the future. I strongly agree with my right honourable friend on the importance of research. As he knows, the government is funding research into ME through the National Institute for Health and Care Research, the NIHR, and the Medical Research Council, the MRC. As he kindly mentioned, these institutions came together to fund Decode ME, the world's largest genome-wide association study of the condition, something also mentioned by the Honourable Member for Putney. We're backing this study with over £3 million to analyse the samples from 25,000 people in the search for genetic differences that may indicate an underlying cause or the increased risk of developing the condition. And the study is already generating key insights. For example, whilst it has long been known that women are more susceptible to the condition, the Decode ME study has shown for the first time how their experience differs from men. And I'm happy to provide my right honourable friend, the member for Romsey and Southampton North, with the assurance that not only will I do everything to get this plan over the line as quickly as possible, but I will also work with people like the Chief Scientific Advisor, Professor Lucy Chappell, to eradicate the gender bias in research. Genomics is already revolutionising the way we diagnose and treat a range of conditions, solving riddles for diseases that were mysteries just 10 years ago. And by improving understanding, investing in research and implementing our delivery plan, we will go further and faster in the years ahead. Dame Siobhan, I know there is much to do. I would end by paying tribute to my right honourable friend for everything he's done on this. I will continue to work with him and other honourable and right honourable members to ensure we get this right.
The question is that the House has considered World ME Day. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.